Good morning. How is everyone? Good, good. Glad to have you here at Calvary. We're glad you chose to be with us today, and we hope you feel welcome as you join us. This week, was traveling to one of the counties that I serve, and this quote was read, and it really spoke to me. I wanted to share it with you. It said, "You can't make a mosaic out of hotel art." You can't make a mosaic out of hotel art. And I started thinking about that. I'm like, hotel art, what is hotel art? Hotel art is that carbon copy of the room next door, right? The same painting in every room. And I think about mosaic art. It's beautiful. Rarely does one look alike next to another. But what does it take to make make a mosaic? It takes crushing and placing the pieces back together to become something that stands out, that's unique, that's not hotel art. All of us want to be special, and we want to be a beautiful picture and a beautiful work of art for God, right? That's what we strive to be. But rarely do any of us want to be crushed and broken into pieces. But God can put us back together into a unique, beautiful work of art. I pray that today, if you're in that crushing moment, if you've been crushed, and you're wondering, how in the world am I going to put these pieces back together? Remember, you don't want to be a piece of hotel art. You want to be special and unique, and God is going to do that for you. Let's remember that as we go through this week, as we kneel and pray.
Let us witness and be forever about your business here at Calvary. Continue to bless our church, but it's in your name I pray. Amen.
Please stand and join us as we sing 10,000 Readings.
Worship His holy name.
Randall, would you bless the offering?
Heavenly Father, we come to you again this morning, Lord. We just thank you for all the blessings you give us, Lord. We just thank you that this is where we chose to be this morning, in your house, Father. And I just pray that we receive a blessing by being here. And Lord, as we give back a portion of that that's already yours, Father, we just pray that you just take it and use it as you see fit to honor and glorify you. All this we ask in your precious and holy name. Amen.
All right. The choir is going to sing Shouting Time. There's going to be a point where you read on your screen where it says to please stand. We ask that you would stand and join us at that time. Thank you. Y'all can just remain standing. Y'all can just remain standing. So I got a new guitar, and I was really excited about playing it because it plugs in and it plays over the speakers. And the first song I do with it, right in the middle, my pick breaks in half. So I mess up the whole thing. But anyway, we're good now. Please join us as we sing a medley with 3 different songs this morning. I love to tell the story of unseen things above, of Jesus and His glory, of Jesus and His love. I love to tell the story because I know 'tis true. It satisfies my longings as nothing else can do. I love to tell the story, 'twill be my theme in glory, to tell the old story of Jesus and His love. What a wonderful change in my life has been wrought since Jesus came into my heart. I have light in my soul for which long I had sought since Jesus came into my heart. Since Jesus came into my heart, since Jesus came into my heart, floods of joy o'er my soul like the sea billows roll. Since Jesus came into my heart. I was sinking deep in sin, far from the peaceful shore, very deeply stained within, sinking to rise no more. But the master of the sea heard my despairing cry, from the waters lifted me, now safe am I. Love lifted me, love lifted me, when nothing else could help. Love lifted me, love lifted me, love lifted me, when nothing else could help. Love lifted me. And since y'all sound so great this morning, just remain standing, and we will do first and fourth verse of page 688. First and fourth. Savior, like a shepherd, lead us, much we need your tender care. In thy pleasant pastures feed us, for our use thy foes prepare. Blessed Jesus, blessed Jesus, thou hast bought us, thine we are. Blessed Jesus, blessed Jesus, thou hast bought us, thine we are. Early let us seek thy favor, early let us do thy will. Blessed Lord and only Savior, with thy love our beings fill. Blessed Jesus, blessed Jesus, thou hast bought us, thine we are. Blessed Jesus, blessed Jesus, Thank you. You may be seated.
All the way my Savior leads me. Who have I to ask beside? How could I doubt His tender mercy? Who through life has been my guide? All the way my Savior leads me, cheers each winding path I tread, gives me grace for every trial, feeds me with the living bread. You lead me, keep me from falling. You carry me close to your heart, and surely your goodness and mercy will follow me. All the way my Savior leads me. Oh, the fullness of His love. Oh, the sureness of His promise. In the triumph of His blood. And when my spirit floats towards wings its flight to realms of day, is my song through endless ages. Jesus led me all the way. Jesus led me all the way. You lead me, keep me from falling. You carry close to your heart, and surely your goodness and mercy will follow me. You lead me, keep me from falling. You carry close to your heart, and surely your goodness and mercy will follow all the way my Savior leads me. All the way my Savior leads me.
That fixed, whatever it is. Whew. Tommy asked me what mosaic meant. I said, I think it's those dogs shooting pool. I think it's something like that. That's all I had. Good to see that you all made it. You've probably seen water at your house where you usually don't see water. For us, it was on the kitchen counter. And I'm going with the theory that it rained so hard it pushed water under the roof, and maybe it's gone. That's where I'm going with that. So I'll let you know in weeks to come how that works for me. Is anybody in here a fan of the Olympics? Man, I'm a fan of the Olympics. And when I was younger, I used to think how cool it would be for me to do like the bobsledding or the luge. But I've reached the age where I'm pretty sure that's not going to be good for me. So I found a new sport. It's called curling. I don't know if you've seen it or not, but it's like shuffleboard on ice. And you throw this big round, they call it a rock, down the ice, and you try to get it to stop on a certain area. And to do that, you have people with brooms that run down the ice and they sweep in front of the rock. And as soon as the guy lets go of the rock, he starts yelling at them, where to sweep. So I'm thinking of getting a Calvary curling team. And I'm going to be the all-time roller. Mainly because I can't see myself running down the ice. But I was thinking when I was putting this together, I think I could get me, Tommy, Randall, and Art. Because I'm thinking if I put a broom in their hand and start yelling at them, they're going to feel right at home. So that's where we're going with our curling team. Now, if you come tonight, we're having a Valentine's banquet. It's not a couples thing. It's not you don't have to have a couple. You don't have to be in love. You don't really have to like people. Just show up, and we're going to feed you, and we're going to play some games. And Randall Boyce has promised me that he is going to give the secret for longevity in marriage tonight. So you don't want to miss that. I have no idea what he's going to say, but he's going to give us the secret. I have a familiar passage I want to bring you this morning, and now I'm going to explain why I think God laid this on me to bring. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. The 23rd Psalm. For sure, one of the most read chapters in the Bible. If you've spent much time in church, you've probably heard it. If you've been to more than a couple of funerals, you've probably heard it. It's been preached so much at funerals that it's been called the death psalm. It's usually what I flip to when I'm asked to preach a funeral. And that's what I did 2 weeks ago, and I need to give you a little background. I have a dear friend of mine that I used to work for in Lewisburg. His name is Jerry Perry. A good Christian man, friend of mine. His son is the youth pastor at Luke's church over in Giles County. And our paths have crossed and crisscrossed for years. And he means a lot to me. And 6 weeks ago, he called me, and I was back here in my office. And he said, I was just sitting here praying for you and for your church. And I know it's hard not having a pastor, and I just had to let you know I'm praying for you guys. My family's praying for you. My church is praying for you. And that means a lot when you know that people are praying for you. And this guy is one of the roughest, toughest dudes that I have ever known in my life. He quit high school to go to work, and his work is making horseshoes by hand. Not much glamour in that job. It's pretty nasty work. And it consists of standing directly in front of a forge with an open fire and putting pieces of steel in it until they get so hot that they're almost white. And then you take it out with a tong and you beat it and you shape it. And in the summer, when I worked there, if you were directly in front of the forges, it's about 140 to 150 degrees. And inside the building, it's about 120. And this guy, man, he wore it like a badge of honor. Old school. Hard nosed. Expected people to work hard every day. And he never missed a day of work. If he knew I was standing up here preaching without a tie on, he would chew me out today. Because, buddy, he's old school all the way. 5 days after I talked to him on the phone, Luke came over to my house and he said, "Hey, Jerry's in the hospital." And it was like one of those, man, if Jerry's in the hospital, it must be pretty bad. He said, "Look, I don't know anything about it. I know that they don't know. He's got the flu, he's got pneumonia, but for whatever reason, he's in the hospital." I said, "Well, you keep me up to date." 1 week went by, no improvement. Second week, no improvement. During the third week, Luke came to the house and he said, "Daddy, something bad's wrong with Jerry. His body's shutting down." And I'm like, "What, he's got the flu or pneumonia? What do you mean?" He said, "Daddy, I don't know. But his lungs have shut down. His kidneys have shut down. He's on a respirator. He's on dialysis. And his fever keeps spiking, 103, 104, and they can't get it down. And they want to put in a feeding tube, but they'll have to get the fever down to even do that." Fourth week, there was no response. His eye were looking in different directions, and they'd shine a light, nothing. They put something down his throat to try to get him to cough, nothing. So I went to see him. And I got there on the day that the doctors came in and said, "We've done all we can do. We don't know what's causing this fever that's wrecking his body, but we've done all we can do." And I'm sure there are people in here who have heard those words about loved ones, and it's like somebody just sucks all the air right out of the room. And I'm going to tell you, it's my weakness. I'm not good at it. I don't ever know what to say. You know, I like fixing problems. I don't like the feeling that there's nothing that can be done. And as I sat there with that family, his wife, who's in her 50s, 3 young adult children, he's got 4 grandchildren, and everybody in the place was in shock. And his oldest son told Luke, he said, "We're planning Daddy's funeral, and we want Jeff to do it." And you know, what do? You know, you say yes, you pray, and you give all the comfort you can. And I left that hospital, and I do what I always seem to do. I just broke down and started praying because the situation was grave, and that's all I had. And I prayed, and then I called Beth, and I said, "Beth, I'm telling you, outside of a miracle from God, I don't believe he's coming out of this." And my next thought as I was driving back from Nashville was, "God, please give me some words that I could say that would bring honor to this man's life, that maybe could give some comfort to some of this family that's hurting." And I came to the church and I wrote across my notebook, 23rd Psalm. And that's all that came. And I started reading that psalm over and over and over again. And this thought came to my mind. This psalm is not about death. This psalm is about life. This little 6-verse psalm got me excited. It's simple to read, but it says so much. The strength and the depth of it are far-reaching if we'll study it and not just skim over it. The peace it gives is not because we can escape trials. The peace comes because God leads us through the trials. It talks about a readiness to face deep, dark times. It tells us we're going to face attacks. But it tells us the goal is following Jesus Christ and letting Him lead us through. I know there are people in this crowd this morning that have heard the words, we've done all we can do. And sometimes people come out of that, and sometimes they don't. But I want you to hear me this morning. The sadness is different. The grief is different. The whole thought process is different when there's a Savior involved. These 6 verses today talk about God providing refreshing, renewing, guidance, protection, abundance, and confidence. What it doesn't promise is that we can fly over or avoid or go around valleys, but we can go through them. And I think that's what David is saying when he writes this. I'm going through trouble, but I'm not going alone. If you don't have a relationship with Christ this morning, these words won't mean much to you. But if you know Jesus, you know what I mean by peace and comfort. Verse 1, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. My shepherd reveals a pledged relationship between you and the Master. Lord of my life, occupier of first place. That's how the relationship has to be. Shepherd is the most intimate, close word used in the Psalms. Instead of king, deliverer, rock, shield, David says shepherd. And the shepherd lives with his flock. He is everything to the flock. He is their guide, their physician, and their protector. Is that how you see Jesus this morning? We can't call him shepherd and not let him lead. Verse 2, he maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. Green pastures and still waters. When you hear that, you should know that the shepherd is not some hired hand. The shepherd is looking for the best, the most plus, the abundant for his flock. Nourishment, abundance, rest, security. I wonder if there's anybody in here this morning who, when you had your first child, you had no idea what you was going to do with them. Anybody? Hey, they don't give you a book. They don't tell you nothing. They have it, and then they just hand it to you. And that's it. I was thinking about that, and you might have heard the story. Devin, our firstborn, I didn't know what to do with him. We didn't have any money. All I knew was I wanted to be a good parent. I wanted to be a good parent. So Beth signs us up for Olin Mills photos. We didn't have no money. I'm telling you. We didn't have no money. So they get you when they're like 2 weeks old or however early it is, and they shove you in front of that camera, and Beth goes, and she brings home a packet of pictures. And man, I yelled. I said, man, we don't have money for that. I said, I'll go next time. I'll show you how this is done. So I went down to Shovel Inn. And I went in the room, and they had an oil painting of Devin. Big old. And I said, oh, I'm not buying nothing. He said, okay, he told the assistant, he said, well, just throw all that in the dumpster. I said, oh, hold on. You can't throw my baby in the dumpster. I went home with every picture they made. And an oil painting that was about as big as the front of this pulpit. And then we had number 2, Zach. And Zach got an 8 by 10. True story. And then we had Luke the 3rd. And we took half of Zach's pictures and turned them on and put Luke on them. Thank goodness they looked alike as babies. Time you get to the 3rd one, it don't mean, I mean, it's just what it is, right? But that's not how God is. See, God is a great, great Father. Verse 3, He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for His name's sake. He restores, my soul. There is not a person alive who calls themselves Christians that have not stumbled, fallen, or got knocked down by this world. He restoreth my soul. God doesn't get shook by your failures. He wants you back, and He's just waiting for you to turn back. Let me tell you what that could be. God bringing back somebody who's gone astray. Or it could be just a renewal for someone who has just had the world getting away. He leads to the paths of righteousness, right living. Where else would God lead us? For His name's sake. Our ways will either shame or vindicate the shepherd's good name. They'll either bring Him glory or they'll bring Him shame. What you do matters. What you teach matters. What you say matters. Why does it matter? Because lost people are listening and watching. And it may be that you're all they've got. And in verse 4, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for Thou art with me. Thy rod and Thy staff, they comfort me. Life is not always easy. It's not always green grass. Sometimes in your life, you're going to face tough times. And I think this is a verse that makes us use this psalm in funerals. But listen to it. I'm walking through dark times, hard times. The shadow of death is right there. But the shepherd is now right beside me. Not out front leading, but right by my side. Who else is going to take the fear out of evil for us? You going to do that for yourself? Not me. I'm leaning on the one that whipped death, beat sin, and put Satan in his place. And He's coming back. But until then, I'm going all in with Him. I found a book online that was written by a shepherd, and he was explaining the tools of the trade. So I looked up the rod and thy staff. It says, Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. He said the staff was used to draw us close, or to draw the sheep close. It's long and slender with a crook in it to retrieve or guide. It could free a sheep from a snare of a thistle, or it could lift them out of deep water, or it could return a sheep that strays too far. And I thought, thank you, God, for the staff that could guide us and lead us. And then the rod. The rod was really just a club used mostly for discipline. He said he used it for sheep who picked on other sheep or who were trying to eat dangerous plants or wandering around oblivious to danger. He said it was also used to protect against wild animals coming to get the sheep. And then this caught my eye. This shepherd said, I also use it to count. He said it's hard to count sheep when they're all standing on the hillside. So I find a narrow spot and make them go under the rod. And I count them as they go. And as they go under, I look for wounds, diseases, and their overall condition. And see, that's what our shepherd does. He doesn't save us and then just put us over here. He counts us one by one by one. And He cares about our condition. Verse 5. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. This verse switches from shepherd to triumphant host. Hospitality in ancient times was much more than a meal. The host was responsible for the guest's protection and well-being. And God says, come here, Jeff. I'm setting you a table right here in the midst of your enemies. Two things you can get from that. You know, I think right after we talk about going through the valley of the shadow of the death, and then He talks about preparing a table, and I think sometimes we think the table is in heaven. The table's not in heaven. The reason I know that's because there's enemies. There's not going to be any enemies in heaven. I'm telling you, He's preparing the table right here amongst our enemies. And here's what else you can know. God's not scared of our enemies. Not one bit. God and only God turns the threats of life into a victory celebration. And He does it right amongst the enemies. And there's nothing they can do about it. And then He anoints my head with oil. That's an ancient custom started at the coronation of kings and high priests. When a host did that, it meant you were special. And then it says the cup runs over. Jesus gives us in abundance. And I want you to get this picture. You and God at the table. Him at the head. You as a guest. And He has your protection. And He makes it known you're special. And He gives us abundantly what we need. If there are enemies crowding your table, listen to me. It's because you've given them a seat, not God. Why do we continue to choose junk over royalty? We're such an easy target that we give our time and attention to things that God's already defeated. You know, it's not about the arrangements of life that come my way. It's the way I arrange my mind to the things life throws my way. A lot of us have asked fear to have a seat at our table. A lot of us have brought worry to the table. We bring addictions to the table. We bring busyness to the table. And all those things get between us and the host, that is God. And all we have to do is ask God to remove them. Because He didn't give them the seat at the table. We did. Verse 6, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Mercy and goodness. Mercy is a steadfast love, and together with goodness, it gives a picture of a steady kindness and support that one can count on. Where it says, follow me, goodness and mercy, follow me, that is God's all-out pursuit of you. And I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. He doesn't set the table just once. He gives us a lasting covenant if you're willing to surrender. The psalmist in Hebrews says length of days, not just eternity. We are under the leadership, the shepherding, and the hosting of God right now. Think of this psalm as a picture of your life. If we accept Him, He leads us, and He has our paths picked. And sometimes we choose a different path. And sometimes He has to discipline me, and sometimes He just comforts me through the hardest times. He protects me, sometimes even from myself. And He's always leading to victory. Folks, if you've never accepted Him, what would you trade all of that for this morning? Oh yeah, my friend that I was telling you about. This is his 6th week. Going into the 6th week, he's in the hospital. They figured out no brain damage. No dialysis for the past 8 days. His oxygen is down to them giving him 40%. He's sitting up in a chair in the room, and when his kids or his wife walks in, he winks at them. I don't know why God answers prayer the way He does. I just know He has it under control. I hope you wouldn't leave here this morning without knowing Him, without drawing closer to Him. We're going to give an invitation. There's only 2 kinds of people sitting in this crowd today, lost and saved. You're either lost and have no idea what I'm talking about, the peace and the comfort that comes with this, or you're saved. And if you're saved, you might be one of those that's been wandering. Maybe it's just time to come home. I'm going to ask you to stand. Brett, you come. Snyder. And Nicole Brown. And I should know, one of my niece, one of my great niece. I always got it on the way she's a great niece because I'm a great uncle. So. But they're coming this morning to move their membership from Bell Buckle and coming by letter. So I just ask that everybody that's in favor say aye. Aye. All right. So I'll go sit down right there. I'm going to ask you to come up later, shake your hand. You three, John. Here we have Abigail Jones, we call her Abby, and Zany Laney Jones. And when we went on the youth trip to Gatlinburg, we were talking about salvation and those things, and Laney said that she had accepted Christ when we went to Florida in the summer, and she needed to come forward and follow the Lord in baptism and join our church. And she said, well, you need to talk to Abby because Abby got saved one Wednesday night after church back here, and she needs to do the same thing I do. And so they're coming this morning to join our church. They'll be following through in baptism, and I think that deserves a clap. Solid girls right here, I'm telling you, they are a lot of fun to be around. Shannon's been a great influence on them.
I'd like to say something. I met Holly July 21st, 2009, and it wasn't long. You know, she was a friend, but her and Trip became family pretty quick, as well as these girls up here. And y'all have done an amazing job at raising them, and I'm blessed to know you the way I know you. And if any of you get confused on who they are, she's total an idiot. We shouldn't be together. This is a shy one, so. But me and her have no business being together. I just want y'all to know. But
I pray about that often. I do.
But I want to say this. It took one person asking them to come on that trip with us to Daytona to change their lives, to change Holly, my best friend, to change Trips, change Julie's. It took one person asking, and these youth trips are so big to us. And I just want to say thank you, and I love y'all. I love your daughter.
So when we dismiss, I'm going to ask that you'd come by and welcome the four of them to our church. I thank God that He is still working. I thank God that He's still in control. And one thing before we go, and I told it to my Sunday school class this morning, our church is going to be, or trying to be, instrumental in starting a mentoring program for the high school football team at Shelbyville, with the hopes that it goes on to other sports and hopefully even on to other schools. And if you are a male over the age of 20, if you think you'd be interested, and this is what it's going to involve: a phone call a week and once a month sitting down and having a meal with some kids who don't have a lot of influence, male influence in their life. And we're just going to try to help however God leads us to help. So if you'd be interested in doing that, if you would see me before you, I would appreciate it. Thank you. Anything else before we go?
Yeah, we got choir practice tonight. Or we're having training.
We are having discipleship training. We're having everything that goes along with that at 5, and then at 6, we'll feed you. You don't have to bring a thing. We'll do just a couple of games, and I'll get you out of here, okay? Celebrating love.
Yeah.
We'll come up with something lovely. I promise. Anything else before we go? So we'll do that at 6. All right? Everybody got that? All right. I guess we got a song to sing.
Yep.
Love lifting. That's a lot of love.
That's right.
Love lifted me.